Hello and welcome to the Roundtable Podcast. I'm Shogun. Today is the first ever meeting of the new Gathering of the Occult special event, which will be taking place every Friday, covering different occult-related topics. This was the brainchild of Eric's and of Dr. Jace, and they have planned an event today about the topic of heathenism. So, before we get started, just remember we are the Roundtable Discord server. You can find us by Googling Roundtable Discord. We are on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, BitChute, and YouTube. And you can find all of that on the server or on those platforms. That being said, welcome Dr. Jace and everybody else. Thank you very much for planning and running this event. Whenever you are ready, you may begin.
Thank you for the introduction. So I would like to start off with a basic understanding of what heathenry is. So it can be called heathenism or heathenry. So that basically means whoever follows the religion of heathenry is a believer in Norse gods, Aesir and Vanir, which is the two family gods. I would just like to explain a little bit of my practices, and you guys can have. I'm open for questions as well. It's just going to be a sort of introduction. You can ask questions, not necessarily in a debate style, because I'm just looking to answer general questions, general thoughts. I especially know that Shogun has a lot of thoughts himself. He's interested in religions, and I've heard him interested. So I'll start off with this. So I believe in the Aesir and the Vanir gods, which are the two family of gods, and I believe. So I right now my practice and how much I've been practicing. I've been practicing for 5 years. I've been studying. So what really got me started on this is like when I started studying Norse gods, and it eventually become to practicing. How I practice is, for example, I will do an offering or ritual or gathering. So I like to explain the three like sets of what I do. So offering is when you offer something to the gods for a spiritual connection with the gods, often for guidance, energy, and etc. A ritual is when you have it's a combination of many purposes, often like a offering, but it's many purpose. It's individual, and you're just doing something to get a greater spiritual connection, get the attention of the gods, and even more. I would explain a gathering as a group of people who are doing several different offers, and so it's often like it's often like church where you get together. That's very much what is, but it's not centered around lessons, but rather worshiping the gods themselves. So I believe in multiple gods. I believe that just a few like ideas about like the whole. I can even answer questions about the afterlife, but I don't want to go on a monologue. I'm open for questions, so if you want to ask me what is my afterlife and etc., I'm very open to questions. So I'll leave it for open discussion for now.
Well, can I ask by saying, what is your take on your religion being thrown to the side as mythology?
So what is my thoughts on it being of Norse mythology?
Yeah, the fact that it's being called mythology, but you believe it to be so. What exactly are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm perfectly fine with people calling it mythology because roughly any religion has its own mythology. So if you understand that the Bible has, or even like in Christianity has mythology, so I'm fine with that. And so I believe it to be so, and I'm fine with it, but I just don't necessarily, when it comes down to talking about the religion, I get frustrated when people just consider it as child's play mythology. That's the answer to your question.
Okay, I'm not saying that it is. I'm just wondering what your take is on it, because it's as what's being taught and what's majority concept of people's thoughts on Norse, beliefs is that it's mythology.
Yeah, so it necessarily a lot when I look at mythology and how you're asking how I take it sometimes very literally, and I also take it very metaphorically. So I look at the mythology, and I rather look at it a retrospective look how it's been transgressed and through Norse culture and Norse society, and I rather look at that and I try to make a reference of what it actually meant. And I think I actually have a kin, which is like my community, who believes in the Norse gods. We have come down to the decisive, a kind of decisive location of what in mythology, what is roughly a. You can take it very mythological, or you have to be metaphorical.
Okay. I was just wondering because I think it's kind of interesting that there are people who starting to come back to that belief system, because my little brother actually has a friend who believes in that as well, and I don't necessarily disbelieve it. I just never thought of it as anything more than mythology up until this point. So I would like to hear some more on that take because I'm always open to everything because anything's possible. It is in the air on what is a god and what isn't. Because in the end, the only people who know what happens after we're dead are the people that's dead, really, right? So I take everything as an opinion whenever it comes to things like that.
Thank you, and may the gods watch over your brother. It's very rational. I like to always express that. My belief is very rational. It's not different from any other belief. And thank you for thinking as opinion. Does anybody else have any other questions?
Well, okay. Well, how about you go through the Valhalla? This is really what is being believed of it, right? Valhalla. We're talking about Asgard, Thor.
So
As
to sorry.
no. That's basically what we're speaking of, right? Because I'm sure that some people might not take it as literal, but yes, that is what you're speaking of, correct?
Yeah. So, yeah, a lot of people have some misconceptions about Valhalla. They say, well, that's where the dead goes, and that's half correct. But a lot of people have this idea as Valhalla as being for all warriors. And so, what I like to express, it's not the whole of Odin. What the Valhalla is it's the whole of gods, and it's basically each god has their own hole where they take the dead in from Midgarth, which is this life or Earth. And so yes, the Valhalla is it's a very interesting concept. It's very deep, and if you look into Valhalla, there's a lot of Icelandic names for it, but rather what we know it's the whole of the gods, and then basically what you do in this life based off an honorable and dishonorable system, and whatever your passion is and what you do, it will depend. And what connection do you have to certain gods? You will go to the whole of a certain whole, which is of those gods. And Valhalla is just a combination of gods. So necessary, yes, if you're a warrior or a person who seeks wisdom, necessary if you die in such a way or you die having that passion, you go to Odin's hole, but that's in Valhalla, and there's a whole system for the afterlife, but that's the ideal.
So, what would be considered you to be a warrior? What would consider that to be aspect is if you die honorably for your beliefs.
Yeah, so very so that's where my beliefs stand is what I could decipher from the Poetic Edda is it's a place where men or roughly men and women go when they do something honorable or if they fight for their principles or whatever, even if they're a warrior and they maybe they're in the war and such happen, they die such an honorable death and the light shines upon them, Odin will shall pick them to go to that hole or the Allfather. So it's very interesting. Even if you're a person who's saying that, let's do a hypothetical situation. If you were a lawyer who is trying to battle a court case, and he literally has to survive off people attacking him for him trying to defend this person. So if you die trying to defend your beliefs or someone, at least in some form, yeah, that's an honorable death, and it depends on the situation. But yeah, it's not only just warriors who die in a war; it can be many other things.
Okay, that's an interesting concept. I never heard of that, and I think that's ties in roughly with what I would like to believe is what considers a good or bad afterlife, whatever it may be. So I think that's a pretty good belief system. Is that I mean there is no correct way, in my opinion, to believe something because in the end, like I said, the only people that know what's real and what isn't are dead. So it's like I think it is a nice aspect to believe inside that sort of deal where it's like your afterlife is determined whether or not you stand by your morals and your concepts of what you believe is real or fake or what you might fight in. So I think that's pretty cool. So what exactly are the levels of the afterlife as far as Norse mythology goes? Because I understand there's a certain level that is encased in ice and fire and things like that. There's you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so go ahead and explain that because I've always been interested in this.
That's a good question because this is what I would like to for everybody in like the who's ever listened to this and who is in here. It's imagine it like a circle. So you have the halls of the gods, which that's an ideal situation. So what I like to explain is once you go to the halls for what principles you hold, once you get to the, it's not like a heaven and hell concept where you get to stay there forever. So what actually happens is if you don't keep the same the ideals, the same principles, and you break the principles and you break the barriers that got you into the hole in the first place, what happened is you go to Helheim. And Helheim is not like hell, it's not torture. Because this is, I need to explain that there's, Helheim is a split into two. So it's either the people who go to trial themselves to see if they will move on back to at least trying to get to the hole. And there's the other half, like if you, so imagine if Lars, for example, you lived your entire life and you did nothing, absolutely nothing. You just did absolutely nothing and practically you would go to Helheim, the side where you're just a regular person. You're a regular person in society, so you should go to one side of Helheim. The other side is trials. So I said, if you break, like you're in the Hall of the Gods, or at least the whole, yeah, that's what Valhalla is, or what Hall is. It's the Hall of the Gods, and you break that principle. What's interesting is you go down to Helheim, and if you have to pass the trials. So you keep doing it, you keep doing it, you keep doing it until you pass the trial. After you pass the trial, you spiritually will, in some form, it's said is you elevate to Avalon, which is a garden, and you will live yourself as a plant. And once you die as a plant, you will go back into this life, Midgarth. So you go back to this life, and you get another chance to go back to the holes. And the idea is to keep your honor, you keep your principles that got you into the holes in the first place. It's not like your insured spot.
Hmm. That's very interesting. So basically, it's like a second chance that you're given to actually do something of yourself. Now, whenever you come back, is it like, whenever you come back, do you remember those trials and testimonies you went through in the afterlife, or no?
No, I would rather say you don't remember it, as most people don't remember. There, and that's where I would actually connect the idea that maybe you see your past life in some form, the past yourself. So that's there's a possibility of such of that, but I usually don't remember where you came from, and you can keep going through the cycle. But the ideal position is to stay in the hole of the gods.
Huh. Interesting. Okay, so explain like where the guides exactly lie you to be at. Like it, depending on which one you relate towards more towards, is where you end up at. Is that what I'm picking up on?
Somewhat. So, Lars, let me. I'm gonna ask you a question. What is your passion in?
Really, honestly, just living my life in the best, the positive way I can. At least it's going towards one day towards a positive direction in my life is a good life. Is a good day lived. I think whether it be helping
Uh,
someone across the street or something like that. You know what I'm saying? Like doing something positive and productive out of my day.
So as I explain the afterlife, I just want to ask you even deeper. Like, what are some of your hobbies? The hobbies you probably do until the day you die. Necessary to the day you die, but you hopefully you can do your entire life.
Um, Sports, data, arithmetic, things like that. Looking into certain things, I think is a hobby of mine. I would say it could be considered a hobby because a lot of people don't do that much anymore, and it could be wasted time more times than not. But I think just kind of looking up your own data, stuff like that, I kind of find that as a fun little activity that I do on the side.
So that's interesting. So in that situation, what are you trying to bring down to people? Are you trying to bring justice in the situation, like the truth in the situation? Can I ask?
Um, basically what the facts lie out because a lot of things are based off of opinionated platforms nowadays. I believe, and I believe that people need to actually look into what they're looking at whenever they're told something through their biased, opinionated news outlets and media sources. You dig what I'm saying? Look into it. Don't just sit there and believe whatever comes out the word of mouth of the next man. Look into it yourself.
So I dig what you're saying. So I'm gonna say, you say, for example, you live your entire life and you're trying to find out the truth of the reality. So in that
Yeah.
afterlife system, say you connect mostly with the God tier. So what the gods work is they rather pick someone that has relate to them, who is like them, because oftentimes they're in the same search to truth, and so they're necessarily not perfect people that know everything and everything in their masterful subject or their masterful field or control. So they will look for people who have lived their life and have lived their life doing so. So you would go to the god of Tyr, which is justice in a lot of ways, as Tyr. And so if he is the god of justice, if you live your life and you die with the same principles, morals, you keep fighting and striving for that, which you never master, but you will go towards. Most likely, you would be chosen by the god tier, and that's how I would explain it. But also, I've already explained that to you, and what is said is you'll be bring up by Valkyries, which oftentimes some people can say it's easy to relate them as angels or female spiritual warriors in some form or way, but they're often just like angels at least in my comparison to people.
Hello.
Hello.
Yes,
Are
hi
you still
there.
there, right?
We can hear you. Oh, are you there,
Okay.
Jace?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, so I get what you're saying. All right, well that's a nice thing to believe in. Now, what are these allegations that have towards them being evil guys? I mean, bad evil guys that they cause a sight and that they hate humanity and that they laugh upon the face of humanity and things like that. That's maybe in ties with it.
So
You
okay,
know,
so
go ahead.
So for that's a concept that I like to address to many people because they have like an evil and wrong system. You can believe everything what you have, but say if you look at a god like Lovi or Loki, Loki himself, some people say, well, he's a trickster. That's evil. It's like that's not that might not have necessarily be true. Like maybe another person, because you can create your own morals. So there's nothing commanded by the gods down to you. So when you create your own morals, you create your own. You decide what is evil and what is bad, what is honorable, what's caring, what's kind. And so you might see the god of Loki as a bad person, or you could see this person as a great person. He's without him there is no justice. Without chaos there is no order. Like you also got to look at very contradictory. That's up to you. That you create your own morals. Nothing is forced upon you in my religion. So there's no Ten Commandments telling you that you have to do A, Y, and Z. It's rather you have to come to your own morals, your own justification. At least for what you think is going on. So like necessary if you look at the gods you would have to decide if they're evil or bad, and that's up to you. Maybe it's beyond that. That's entirely up to you. So it's not very objective morality. It's I would say people have told me it's subjective morality, but I do not know how to feel about it. All I know is you create your own morals in many manners, and as I've studied throughout my 10 years.
Okay, so would you say that it very much supports the idea of individualism, an individual moral construct, and not every one person will believe the same thing or whatnot, right?
Yes, it supports the idea of individualism in a lot of ways. In the max way, I would rather say, because everything's individual to a degree.
Okay, that's pretty cool. All right, yeah, because I never really looked into Norse mythology. Now what? Well, what you can call mythology, quote unquote. I'll leave it at, because that's where I would say that most people would know the ideals as. You know what I'm saying? Just kind of leave it into a broad aspect here. So it's like Greek mythology, for example. What do you believe inside? Does it have any ties or correlation with that or no?
Yeah, so this is interesting, and this is where me and Lady Eric's we're going to talk about. We thought we were going to talk about, but we have nobody to add on to what I'm going to say. But what I say, we believe that a lot of the gods, the Norse gods, if you support, largely we're seeing connections with the polytheistic gods. So we rather say that maybe no matter if you support the Greek gods or you support the Roman gods or you support the Norse gods, and many factors. A lot of ways you could be worshiping the same deity, but in a different way. So it's the same. It's the same person with the same amount of abilities. Rather, it has a different name, and that's I connect that because there's a story in mythology. I'll call it Grismithfall, where the Allfather or Odin says he's called by many names, and people know me by this name, but I've never changed from what I do.
Okay. Huh. Okay, so basically you could be following the same thing that is that, but it could be just described inside of a different platform. It's like, okay.
Yeah, it's rough. So it's more of a theory, an alternative idea. It's a thought that I've been thinking about, and it necessarily makes sense to me. At least that's why
Yeah.
when you read Die Germany, which is a book by a Roman citizen, he believed in the Roman gods. He would compare all the Norse gods and they would put the Roman names over the Norse gods. And so you could see that maybe no matter where you're from, you're still getting a hanger of truth. And that's where me, Lydia Eriks, and Zoo, if you've never met him on the server, I bet almost everybody has, we roughly agree on.
Huh. Interesting. So what do you think that branches off into other religions that have these set base morals and aspects, like Christianity and the Torah and all that? That kind of epic Gilgamesh, even if you may.
This is where it might get controversial because I don't believe that there is
I mean,
one
gay
God. I don't.
controversy.
It. I guess I'm controversial, but anyway, it's like okay. So you say okay, if you have one God. I necessarily don't believe in a monotheistic God. I don't believe a monotheistic God's a true thing or whatsoever. But like I could see correlations with Revelations to Ragnarok, but that's an entire different subject. I'm purely answering your questions. I'd say monotheistic gods don't exist in my worldview.
Okay, and I think it's definitely safe to say because amongst these monotheistic gods that there is a trinity, there is a this or that. So there's a notion that there's more to it. If they are monotheistic, then what they are is omnipresent, which I would say that can correlate to a lot of different things. So I think that what you're saying, what you believe in, is in no way whatsoever like out the water, because it is an ancient religion. It's there for a reason. It has a purpose in its society. Whenever it was there, it just gets thrown to the side as society grows. Basically, you would
Yeah,
say, and that's just what happens because everybody changes their ideals or morals versus because of what we know and what we feel. It can separate us from the actual earth that we live on, per se, like the plants and the nature around us and all that. Well, our beliefs can or separate us every day closer and closer towards our materialism and what we create as human beings more than what we have here that the earth has been given to us. And I believe that that's definitely a thing, is that changes in what we believe in. That's actually important changes, and what can
yeah,
be the
yeah,
truth also is strayed and gets twisted as time goes on. And
yeah.
so
I couldn't agree more, but I would like to everybody know that like right now, like paganism, occultism, polytheism is actually on the rise more than ever. Now, anybody can contribute that to a number of things. I contribute to a main thing, but it's on the rise, and it's been in shut away because there's people who are coming back to it, and as you said at the beginning, you find it amazing that people are coming back to it, and so yes, it's not out of the water. That's why I like to say it's very rational. It's not like someone is proposing to you that necessarily that your finger is the center of the world, right? It's not out of the water.
well, that's the thing, is that's where I'm led to my dilemma with it, is that there is nothing that isn't rational whenever it comes to that, because everything's an opinion. It's out the water. Your belief is no more proven than another person's, per se. If you know what I'm saying, mine is no more proven than anyone else's about where we started from and what happens after we die. Because, like I said, the only people who know that are dead. So I think it's good that people have their own belief systems on it. But it's funny that you say that, because also the fact that they can correlate, does that also correlate with the Egyptian gods and everything like that?
So yeah,
Uh,
yeah. So
yeah, go
I
ahead.
was gonna I was gonna address something with the Egyptian gods. I don't think necessarily they like line up in any form. But I would say majority of polytheistic gods line up. I would say with I say that maybe the stories of the gods of that are how they come to be or any form of way. It's different, but I don't think they're purpose like. So if you look at the Mayan societies within roughly like the I would say before the 11th century, you can notice that they had a guy named Zavu, and I bet Zoo would bring this up in that it was very much like the Allfather, the Odin, and then if you look at the
Mhm.
Germanic paganism, which was the belief of the German, they had Zoo, and then if you go to Anglo-Saxon, they had Yi, and which was the same thing as the Allfather practically. You go to Slavic, and you even if you go to South African mythology, it's so interesting and it's so widespread that I'd almost say there's a large amount of consistency. And anybody is open for any more questions? Like I like to hear some new voices.
Is there anyone else out there that wants to speak up? Because
Um,
I, go ahead.
yeah, sorry, haven't been asking questions. Lawyers just seem to have a lot of them, so just letting it go. But I'm not sure. Is there any aspect of actual like ceremonial practice that you do, like in terms of like rituals that you do, things like that?
to a nature. So I will light candles. I will have an altar of a god. I will have largely maybe alcohol use. Um, because it's known for the gods, and it's usually under my permission of my parents. They use the alcohol, but I just had to note that for legal reasons. Uh,
Yeah.
but anyway, so yeah, it's interesting that you do candles. There's a lot of form of that, and we also have prayers too. I should have mentioned that earlier. I do have prayers, but the prayers are not necessarily the same as a Christian, or at least in Abrahamic religions. That's where prayers came around. But anyway, yeah, that's your answer. That's the ceremonial practices. Sometimes a bonfire, if I can say it, and then usually sometimes there's a ceremonial thing I have to do where I have to listen to music, maybe, or it has to be it has to be nighttime or a certain time of day. That's largely what I would say, and sometimes it's a certain day depending on the Nordic calendar. Does that answer your question, Shogun?
Yes, I think it does.
Now, what's a Nordic calendar? What exactly is on the Nordic calendar versus what's it called, the Julius?
You mean the Georgian calendar?
Yeah.
That's what we use. So yeah, what's interesting about the Nordic calendar itself, it's largely named after the gods, and that's why I said I have to do it on certain days. So the summer months were Harpara, Skumlina, Hania, Tuvenal, and if I remember right, it was Hastamanu. There's the winter months, which is Grunoi, Yula. Well, Yula was a very interesting month. I recommend anybody not to go outside, and because according to traditional law, it's said that people hunt each other. I don't know why. I think there was a cultural reason behind it. Morgensa, Boryi, Goi, and Elmad. Sorry, my Old Norse is a little trashy today, so my Old Norse would have sounded more fine and better. But anyway, it's that those are the days, and then at least the months, and the days are like Thunoi, Wisdi, Suna. The days, so you obviously Thunor is Thursday, and it's after the Thor itself, or Thunor.
Okay, I got you. Now, what's the one thing that you notice that outside of all these? I guess what quotations mythological like religions that are ancient and basically thrown to the side by many. Like, what do you think that they have all this correlation to with these separate gods and sacrifices that need to be made, whether they be very brutal and heinous like the Aztecs with the sacrifice of the virgin on the on the pyramid and taking out the heart and eating it and all that type of deal, to where you have different types of sacrifices like altar with Abrahamic and whatnot. Now, where do you think all this correlation comes to a conclusion that all is based off of a human instinct and basis traits that we have, that we see the gods as, right? Is that like all of them have like this separate thing where it's like if you believe inside different gods and you believe they have certain traits in them that ensue the reason why we are the way we are, would you say so?
So I don't. So sorry, I have to switch my mic, so my voice is gonna be a little different. I'm here and here. My mic actually died on me. Poor mic. But anyway, it's like yeah, like the calendar, the Norse calendar is interesting. So I don't hold any like religious value to the calendar. I really try to think that the religiously they would name it after the gods for certain reasons, but I do find some significance with the northern calendar based off the holidays. I feel like there's spiritual effect that you have on like the holidays, depending on the Nordic calendar. But for the days and the traits, I don't know why I know why they did it, because it was relatable. People could understand it. But also, there's some spiritual effects. There's some truth to it, but I don't hold 100% to it, because I still go with the Georgian calendar. But we all have to note in here that the Georgian calendar is still based off polytheistic gods.
Oh yeah, most definitely. Is August, September. Yeah, I mean that's their Saturn, Saturday. Yeah. Um, it's kind of funny as you say that too, because it's like people have kind of brought it to the side as scientific reasons why people change during the different seasons. Now, what does your mythology have to say? or what does your opinion have to say about that? That we don't change because of the seasons; it's because of some different spiritual aspect.
So actually, I fall along the scientific of things. So I think that there's stories in mythology that represent the gods, like initiating something. So my idea of the gods, and necessarily when people say, well, they contribute to natural effects. Well, this is what how it's developed, and this is my a valid my I think my idea. So the gods themselves will initiate such a season, right? And when they have a season, there's scientific process that happens that allows certain events to happen. So for example, the gods control the scientific process at which they're in control of. So for I'm just gonna go a little bit off and I'll return to your thing. So if I think of Thor,
Oh, go ahead.
Thor, the god of thunder, he would say he initiates the process by slamming down his hammer. Then before the scientific process will happen to allow thunder to happen. And that's how I view it. Same with the seasons. That's why I went a little bit off. But does that answer your question? Do you need a little bit more?
No, most definitely does answer my question, and thank you for answering it that way because it actually makes a lot of sense because there always has to be a cause before there is an effect, of course, and the cause can always start from one place to another. So, and it doesn't even have to interject with each other, but they eventually have a tie with each other. And I think it's kind of interesting to say that because we always have to find a reason why things happen. As what we have as inquisitive creatures, we have to always find a reason why this happened, why that happened, and why everything else is the way that it is. We have to find a source to it, and it's very hard for everyone to agree on one source. Why do you think that is? Not going off of your topic there, but just asking that one question. Why do you think it's really difficult for everyone to agree on one concept?
Why do you think it's really difficult to like? It's so. Do you mean in like the matter of the mythology, or do you mean in the matter of society?
Society and as a whole. Like, why is it hard for everyone to grasp one ideals to follow?
Because I believe that I believe in some way when okay, so there's a part of the self in my religion. So there's a part of the self, and it's called which is called minyan, which is thought, or mugen, which is thought. And so when the gods gave image, so they didn't create us, they gave image to us. They created mugen, which is thought. So I believe that humans are very individualistic, and so everybody's gonna necessarily have their own opinion. And I don't want to use the source on a podcast, but they kind of have a stick they want to put up everybody's ass to say that they're
Yeah.
right. That in some form we need validation of our ideas, and so therefore I think it's very individualistic. That's why I believe in individualism rather than everybody. Well, this is just right or wrong. Everybody has their own say in everything. So, yeah, that's why.
No, I believe that same thing. Is that like no one is exactly right, but everyone wants to be right. And that's the issue. Is that if everyone was right, then that means everyone would be perfect. And if anyone was right about everything, they would be considered perfect, which no one is perfect, right? And what a lot of people argue, especially in the server, that Jesus Christ is the only perfect person. Why would you say that he would be the only person who walked this earth that would be perfect? Or why would he be different from anyone else? Well, because he was the son of God and whatnot. Now, what about the gods that walked the earth here? Did they ever walk the earth at one point inside of your belief?
Oh, so thank you. This is the question I've been waiting for. Oh, I'm very excited about this. This is a very interesting one too because the gods did actually walk on earth. So there's a story called Christmas Ball, and Christmas Ball is when I told you Odin goes by many names. It's showing that even the gods themselves would come upon humans themselves, and they would meet with humans. So what's interesting with the gods, it's not like a Jesus scenario or a prophet scenario where they're like, I have a message to spread and I want everybody to follow it. Rather, the gods came down to the humans, tribes of people, to understand their needs rather than trying to tell them what to do. So what the gods would do is often that's why Odin's called the One-Eyed Wanderer, because he shapeshifts into the One-Eyed Wanderer and he walks upon humans to understand if what humans actually need. So he'll gain his wisdom when he is meeting with the people that he's spiritually connecting to understand what people actually need rather than telling them what they do need. So that's the answer. If you want any more, I can tell you.
Oh, go right ahead. I mean, this is a question you've been waiting for. Go right ahead and get into the meat of it. This is why we're here.
While we're here, that's very funny. So yeah, in a lot of ways, um, it's a lot of ways it's a lot of ways it's interesting. So it's when you meet when the gods come down to, they often come down to understand needs. So they never it's I want to explain it, but a lot of ways I've actually met people who think they have met the gods, but the gods will only very rarely ever introduce themselves. But when they come down to humans, there's stories of them just asking like. So there's and the story of Grismy Soul. It shows that Odin wants to understand the needs. So he came upon a king, and when he came upon a king, he asked him, "What do people struggle with? What do you see the average man and his wife struggling with?" And so, yeah, very much they get to the core things. The meat of it is you want to always treat the gods with respect. The gods, well, it's very much like a friend. So if you give the gods a handshake, they'll give you a handshake. If you say you've promised the gods that you're gonna follow through with something, you follow through with it. If the gods say they're gonna follow through with something, they're gonna follow through it. But if you disrespect them and then you say, well, it's kind of like having a friend. That's like what I explained. It's like imagine you telling your friend that 5 o'clock, I'm gonna come, right? And then you show up at 10 o'clock at night, right? They're gonna become
Yeah.
equally angry, and it's so the gods will distance themselves away from you, but you do not never want to show respect. And when they come upon, they often help if it's needed, but they only understand the needs of people. And I would love to get to the meat of it, but it would take a couple hours because even my kin will largely disagree with what they do and what they do not.
Okay, so that's where your people reach to a disagreement. So is there consensus where y'all can come to some type of agreement with that idea? Because I think it's pretty interesting. Because I mean that's the whole basically, arguably, the whole reason why Jesus came down to earth, if you may, was to basically be the part of God that comes back to him after death, to understand why we are the way we are. That's what I take from it whenever I read from it, is that it's a part of God that has to understand his creation. That's why he was sent down and why he died for our sins, is so that he could become back one of God and through the Trinity, and to be able to understand why we are, so we could gain the forgiveness and so our repentance would actually be taken through prayer. And that's the thing. Do you think that could be misconstrued, or do you think that could correlate with what you're saying by any means necessary?
A little bit, because when you read the Gospels, it would rather show you that he more teaches than actually listens or actually tries to learn anything. He's spreading the word of what he can know and try to help the Old Testament, but then he sacrificed himself for the needs of humans. And so, yeah, I can agree the ultimate sacrifice was for the needs and a Christian perspective, but a lot of way my gods would rather come down for the needs of humans, and I think he spread more of a message than anything. Because my gods, when you even look at the stories, they never go for needs. They barely ever go for needs of themselves, rather to understand the needs of others. What are they actually need? What are humans struggling with? So I can agree to some degree, but I wouldn't say it's a fair comparison.
Oh yeah, that's the things that's usually misconstrued, that he came here to be serviced, basically, for him to be able to teach us. But I believe that, honestly, if you believe in Southern Christian religion, you should believe that it's a part of God that came down here to learn who we are as people, so that he could get back a part of him, so that he could gain that forgiveness, which the Christian religion teaches. That, after the Old Testament, he is now a more forgiving, more sanctified God, because of the sacrifice that Jesus made. Which, what happens is that you have that kind of gain. He had that gain of having the embodiment of himself inside of a human format back to him. He has an understanding of us as moral beings. Basically, that's why the Norse gods come down, right? Per se, is to have more of an understanding of who we are as people, right?
Yeah, so when they're coming, as I explained, that the gods come down to humans to understand the needs of humans, rather than like exploiting I wouldn't say exploiting. One of I kind of was off on a rant there for a second. No, I mean it's more like they try to understand the needs, and you're correct in the fact that what they want to understand the spiritual connection, what you actually need, and because all Father themselves, he likes to gather wisdom. So say he is the wisest being doesn't mean he is totally. omniscient in the aspect of wisdom. So All Father is a great example because he will come down to the earth to understand the needs, gain more wisdom of humans, then have some knowledge of it and try to find some wisdom and advice for the people who actually follow him. And that's necessarily the belief. And yeah, you got the basics down on that one. I think you've interpreted it correctly. Does anybody else have any questions? Thank you for asking me about the afterlife. Because a lot of people don't know about the afterlife, which is actually it's more rational than anything. But anybody else have
Yeah,
anything
most
to ask?
definitely. Shogun, is there anything that you would like to add?
No, I don't think I have any other questions unless there's anything else you wanted to say, Jace. Maybe.
Yeah, I'd really like for people to get involved with this because I believe that it gives you more of a interpretation and understanding of people who are starting to come back around. It's people who believe these things, and I think that's a good thing to understand it, to know it, and accept it because it's very precise. I think that it has some backing on it, just as much as the Christian religion or anything else does. I mean, it is no more factual than those things are, much less is even the Big Bang. So I believe that it's good to have these understandings and these insights. So if anyone else has a question, there's nothing that's stupid.
When you say they're just as factual as the other religions, and then you say it's useful to have the understandings and insights, did I hear that correctly?
What's that now?
You said you compared it to other religions, right? And you said they're just as factual or something.
No, what I'm saying is that everything is an opinion of what happens after we die because the only people who know are the people that's
Right,
dead.
it's an opinion, right?
Yeah, everything is. Yeah, whenever it comes to that consensus.
It's not an understanding or an insight.
So Eski, what do you think that? Because you sound you're talking about the science and the aspect. Do you think that my aspect of how things happen scientifically is correct in some form or irrational? Can
I wasn't really listening, to be honest. I'm sorry.
I don't think that's irrational at all.
You're talking about the afterlife, right? And then he was saying something about understanding and insights, and he thinks other people should come around and I don't know, just too condescending.
Yeah, people don't have an open ear to anything anymore, and I think that's good that you start having that, like other people as a whole.
Yeah,
you never know.
I'd agree with that.
So yeah, just let me shorten that up. I just basically said the gods initiate something to happen, and then it happens through a scientific process to allow it to happen. So Thor smashes his hammer down, thunder comes down through so he initiates a scientific process, and thunder happens, and that's how I explain it. But anyway, that can be applied to many different situations. Does anybody else new have a question at all? Because I feel like Lars is taking up the mic, and I think.
Well, I've just been.
I don't think anyone has anything to ask, or so if you want, we can conclude the event here, or you guys continue talking. Or Eric's is here now. Maybe he would like to add something.
Do you think that the Norse gods are in other religions, but in different forms?
Yeah, so I think me and you, Lady Erics, have actually talked about that, how the connection from Hinduism to the Norse gods and the Norse mythology to the Hinduistic mythology. There's a lot of connections. We talked about the weird connection with nine. So we said there's nine. I have 9 realms. I have the old father was hanging from a tree for 9 days, 9 nights. He got no drinks, but he had 9 arrows. I explained that I also believe we have 9 planets. You explained you have in your religion at least there's 9 planets that you said writes their fate. If you want to express on that, that'll allow people to understand how what I meant earlier about the connection.
Are you speaking to me or are you speaking to him?
Lady X.
Sorry, I was doing something.
I do got a question. Do you believe that Tower of Babel did happen? A Tower of Babel event?
So do I believe that if I hear you right, the Babylon, or did you say?
No, the Tower of Babel event happened.
So I believe like the historical things happened, but I don't have an opinion about the often some people can say uh, questionable things or rather skeptical things, and I keep an open mind. I've searched a little bit about that, yeah, I would necessarily say I don't really have an opinion on that, but that's a good question.
Yeah, because I think that everything can be connected and tied. Is that there's some point in our societies that we have all became discombobulated, different languages, different skin tones, different living areas, and all that. Like there has to be some major event that happened that caused that to happen. What do you think that would be, or what is your religion back that up as? Why people believe different things and have different languages and different cultures and different societies and different ways to interpret what's God and what's real and.
So yeah, I do believe that the runic, the first language is the runic language, but I roughly believe that we have different languages based off a pretty like normal aspect. I believe that people separated, that people had to understand each other. Eventually, they gained the vocal cords, and when they understood they used their vocal cords, they started to make sounds or developing sounds, and eventually adapt to have different languages. But I do think the first language to ever appear was runic languages among the gods, and that's why I say the runic language is the first, and eventually everything is pretty much. I can make a pretty good case that it's roughly based off that, but
Yo.
roughly the same. There's different languages and different opinions, which is fine because like nothing is forced upon anybody in my religion. So if there's different opinions, no hard feelings.
No, I could definitely say that because Mesopotamian societies, things like that. They came about for a reason. They're there. We have proof that they were there. Why were they there? What? Well, do you think that they were any less technologically advanced than, let's just say, or maybe they're more spiritually advanced than what we are today, but we have more technological structure than, let's just say, they did, but they had a lot more spiritual balance and connection. Do you think that that affects us as people?
Yeah, so that's also I play with that idea too. It's like also like that would be like I think that's a good idea. That's a good thing, like because there's a lot of ways where ancient culture was much better and more advanced than us. Like, so I think spiritually that they were a lot more advanced than us. But to say technologically, no, there's some technological wonders that we're still roughly confused about. But I would largely associate that with a certain idea. But I would just say that they were more spiritually advanced, and that's why I roughly say there is a potential that a polytheistic religion is just roughly a more of a truthful idea than a monotheistic. But as I said, there's merit. There's everyone has their own opinions, and everyone has their own thing they want to stick up everybody's ass, and that's how I explain it.
Yeah, well, I could definitely agree with you there. Everyone wants to stick their own beliefs up everybody's ass, that's for sure. And that's why I'm glad to see that there's something that's coming around that's more accepting, that's starting to gain traction, that has more of accepting that people believe different things. People are different. And that there's no one person who's going to believe the same thing as the next person. I think that's better to accept it than to be against it. So I'm glad to see that's gaining traction.
Does anybody have any questions? Gamebred, do you have any questions? Because you were like roughly talking about paganism. So if you have any questions, you can ask.
Man, not right now, but we can do some private discussions, honestly, but yeah. Because it'd be more helpful, I guess. Like, it'd be because a one-on-one conversation, one-on-one is, I say, the points are getting crossed much easier. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, that's fine, man. We can do that too. So I think this is the last thing I guess I would say because we're wrapping around an hour right now. I would tell people to just explore their ancestors. So there's a lot of ancestor worship in my religion. I guess I would just explore it and don't look at it as like a demonic thing because that's far from the truth. Like as you can already tell, like I've explained it, it's not very demonic. There's nothing demonic about it. I would say it's. I just want people at least to know that when you're talking to a polytheist, treat them as a rational person instead of an irrational person, and just know that polytheism is a very sound idea. And I guess I think that's it. I would just say that it's not demon worship whatsoever, and I don't think it is whatsoever. There's a lot of proof for it. So I think that's the all I have to really say. I don't. Nobody's really answering questions unless they have questions now. I would recommend it.
I definitely agree with you there. That's where I was trying to. That's like the all-around standard that I'm trying to get at. Is that we should be more accepting of each other's ideals and everything. But everyone seems to have this breaking point where they just kind of throw shit to the side. And I don't like that. I think
Okay,
that's
so
very. Yeah. Go ahead.
I think we're gonna wrap it up now. I don't know if Dr. Jace, do you want to say anything else before we do?
Yeah, I would just like to say one more thing. This is a gathering occult, so potentially, I actually, it's for anybody in here. If anybody has like a belief that they hold that's unique, it doesn't have to necessarily be polytheistic or pagan. It can be almost anything. It's if you really just got a belief that it's unique than others, just be open to talk about it here. So that's all I guess I got to say. I kind of am promoting this idea. So.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Dr. Jace. We appreciate you planning and running that event. It was great. And that being said, we'll jump back up to the regular roundtable rooms, whichever anyone wants to use. And that being said, anyone listening on the podcast, we are the Roundtable Discord server. Please join us on the Roundtable. You can Google Roundtable. You can also find us on Facebook, YouTube, and BitChute, and many other places as well. And anyone remaining in the room, let's jump upstairs. Thanks very much. See you back here tomorrow.
Yeah.